Okay, our text this morning, our extra text on the topic is Ecclesiastes chapter 9 and verse 12. And Jed, many of you may know Jed, some of you may not. Jed is Madeleine's eldest boy, and Jed's going to share with us on this passage. Thanks, Jed.
Alright, so Ecclesiastes 9:12 says, "For man also does not know his time, like fish taken in a cruel net, like birds caught in a snare. So the sons of men are snared in an evil time when it falls suddenly upon them." Now, fitting with the theme of sudden change here, obviously when you're hunting, say, fish with a net, when you're hunting a bird with a trap, the idea is to act faster than the animal can react, to confuse the animal, it might be, with the net, or to have the trap act faster than the animal can escape. That creates some pretty sudden change when you got things happening really fast and the animal often doesn't know what to do. Now, in this situation, you can think of us to be like the animals. The world is in some pretty uncertain times at the moment, tossing and turning, and there's some pretty sudden changes going on. It's pretty easy for us to actually get confused and get tossed around in the mix of this and lose sight of God. But unlike the fish and the birds, we have the opportunity to come to places like this, to fellowship, to read our Bibles, and to prepare for these uncertain times, so that we cannot be tossed around and confused when these uncertain times come. So yeah, very much.
Thanks very much, Jed. Good thoughts. Isn't it interesting the Bible has little parallels like that? Okay, Khan's got to share with us his story that he's pulled. Now, I believe this one isn't a real modern day one. Is that the one, Khan, the one we were talking about yesterday? Yeah. It is. Okay, but it's still a lot more modern than Bible times, and something that probably you can all, probably we actually all know the story, but putting it in this context, in this setting, is interesting. Do you want some slides? Slides up. You ready to go? Okay.
Some of you may know the story of Ellen G. White when she was a young girl. She had a life-changing event, which was a very misfortunate one. She wrote an account in the first volume of the Testimonies about this event. Listen closely to know about how this affected her later life. At the age of 9 years old, an accident happened to me which was to affect my whole life, she wrote. In company with my twin sister and one of our schoolmates, I was crossing a common in the city of Portland when a girl about 13 years of age, becoming angry at some trifle, followed us, threatening to strike us. Our parents had taught us never to contend with anyone, but if we were in danger of being abused or injured, to hasten home at once. We were doing this with all speed, but the girl followed us as rapidly with a stone in her hand. I turned my head to see how far she was behind me and did so. And she threw the stone. And as I did so, she threw the stone. And it hit me on the nose. I was stunned by the blow and fell senseless to the ground. When consciousness returned, I found myself in a merchant's store. My garments were covered with blood, which was pouring from my nose and streaming over the floor. A kind stranger offered to take me home in his carriage, but I, not realizing my weakness, told him that I preferred to walk home rather than soil his carriage with blood. Those present were not aware that my injury was so serious and allowed me to do as I wished. But after walking only a few rods, I grew faint and dizzy. My twin sister and my schoolmate carried me home. I have no recollection of anything further for some time after the accident. My mother said that I noticed nothing, but lay in a stupor for 3 weeks. No one but herself thought it possible for me to recover, but for some reason she felt that I would live. When I again aroused to consciousness, she said, it seemed to me that I had been asleep. I did not remember the accident and was ignorant of the cause of my illness. As I began to gain a little strength, my curiosity was aroused by overhearing those who came to visit me say, "What a pity! I should not have known her," etc. I asked for a looking glass, and upon gazing into it, was shocked at the change in my appearance. Every feature of my face seemed changed. The bones in my nose had been broken, which caused this disfigurement. The thought of carrying my misfortune through life was insupportable. I could see no pleasure in my existence. I did not wish to live, and yet feared to die, for I was unprepared. Physicians thought that a silver wire might be put into my nose to hold it into shape. This would have been very painful, and they feared it would be of little use, as I had lost so much blood and sustained such a nervous shock, that my recovery was very doubtful. Even if I revived, it was their opinion that I could live but a short time. I was reduced to almost a skeleton. At this time, I began to pray the Lord to prepare me for death. When Christian friends visited the family, they would ask my mother if she had talked to me about dying. I overheard this, and it roused me. I desired to become a Christian and prayed earnestly for the forgiveness of my sins. I felt the peace of mind resulting and loved everyone, feeling desirous that all should have their sins forgiven and love Jesus as I did. Little Ellen's life was changed in a moment. One stone changed her life. It made a lasting impact upon her life. Did you notice that while she was recovering, she was led to seek for the forgiveness of her sins? Were it not for such an event, she may not have sought for the cleansing of her sins. It's funny how death can make people do that. When we are faced with death, in that moment of sudden realization that we are going to, that death is coming upon us, it's then that a lot of people make a decision to pray to God and seek God, and to seek a clean conscience. All throughout Ellen White's life, she was battling with health problems which were caused by this very event when she was 9 years old. And it's another example about how little things and how one event can change a person's life forever. Thank you, Damon. I'll give it back to you.
Thanks, Karen. All right, let's have the song again. We're starting to get the hang of this a little more. Thank you.
Okay, starting get a bit of volume out of you people. What we'll do, the actual song has the chorus repeat at the very end, the whole chorus, but it's emphasis on that last chorus. So let's come on, stand up, breathe in, sing up. We see the signs around us in the world today. We feel a sense of urgency. This is not the time to play. We see the world on its expiry date. There is tension in the air. and the clock keeps ticking steadily as God's children must prepare. Do you hear him calling out to you when you're busy day to day? Do you hear him say, I miss you, spend some time with me and pray? You're not wrestling with flesh and blood, you need wisdom from above. Carry out the great commission and share the message of his love. Fear God and give him glory, his judgment hour is here. The message will go with power, we must declare. He says, go to every kindred and proclaim without delay. With a loud voice teach the nations, worship God, King of creation. He is coming back, so give the final call. The time is now, don't put it off. Tomorrow's not yours anyway. There are souls out there with questions and they're standing in your way. Eternal life or death, that call is sure. Choose your destiny today. If you refuse, the rocks will cry out. Straight the path, prepare the way. Fear God and give him glory, his judgment hour is here. The message will go with power, we must declare. He says, go to every kindred and proclaim without delay. With a loud voice teach the nations, worship God, King of creation. He is coming back, so give the final call. Fear God and give him glory, his judgment hour is here. The message will go with power, we must declare. He says, go to every kindred and proclaim without delay. With a loud voice teach the nations, worship God, King of creation. He is coming back, so give the final call. You've got to a low murmur, all right? That's all I can hear up here. So tomorrow morning, the Sabbath, we need to really give it all we've got.
Thank you. Okay, let's continue on where we have been following the same theme. What did we look at on the first morning? What Bible story did we look at in some detail? Okay, we had creation, and then a moment in time we had sin entered the world. Okay, what was yesterday? Noah. Okay, so in Noah's time it was a little different because there was 120 years of warning that this disaster was going to happen. In time of creation, there was a warning that something could happen, but it happened in a moment. There was 120 years of warning. People were able to be prepared if they wanted to, but they chose not to, and bam, it came in a moment. And when was that moment? Was it when the rain started to fall? It was 7 days before the rain fell. So there was a close of probation before the actual event happened. The critical moment was much sooner when the decision was made. What did I tell you we're going to look at today? Sodom. Okay, so we're going to look at the story of Lot. Now let's jump straight back to where we were looking, which was Luke chapter 17. Luke chapter 17, and we were around about verse 25, I think it was. 26. Who's speaking here? Jesus is speaking. Okay, so we talk that Jesus talks about Old Testament stories quite often. This is what he had to say about Noah. And as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the Son of Man. They did eat, they drank, they married wives, and they were given in marriage till the day that Noah entered into the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all. Now, we learnt about that story, but there's the key part there, so will it be in the days of the Son of Man. So Jesus is saying this is an Old Testament story, but it's actually also got a future application. Let's see what he says straight after that. Likewise also as it was in the days of Lot. They did eat, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they builded. But the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. Even thus shall it be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed. Now it's interesting there, it says that they did eat, they drank. Remember, with Noah, it says they ate, drank, and were marrying. This adds a little more to it. It says they did eat, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they builded. Now, I was listening to a sermon just recently on this particular topic, and he says that the tone of this is almost like it just all went on like usual, and that's where we find ourselves today. And these things are not necessarily bad things to be doing, but the emphasis here is life goes on as usual. Peace and safety, and then sudden destruction cometh. Was there warning for Sodom? Was there opportunity for the people of Sodom? Yes, there was. There was also opportunity. Not only that, there was actually intercession by God's people. Abraham was interceding for Sodom. And we're going to look at that a little more as we go along. Let's jump across to Genesis 19. This is where the story is, and it's an interesting chapter. I was just going through this morning, just going over some of the notes, and so did I send you to 17? Let's go to 19. As I was going through this chapter, and I was reading some of the details, and I thought, wow, there's a lot more in the story than I thought was in the story. I mean, Jesus summarized it pretty simply. They were carrying on like usual, and all of a sudden the destruction came. But we know from chapter 18 that the Lord came, appeared to Abraham, and Abraham was interceding. If there's 50, and he works his way down to what number? How many faithful was Abraham asking was going to be there? 10. Not many in a whole city, but surely there'd be 10. And he knew there was his relatives, and hopefully his relatives had witnessed to somebody, so there'd be a few faithful in town. Genesis 19, and let's just start in verse 1. And there came 2 angels to Sodom at even, and Lot sat in the gate of Sodom, and Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face towards the ground. And he said, Behold now, my lords, turn in, I pray you, into your servant's house, and tarry all night, and wash your feet, and you shall rise up early, and go on your ways. And they said, Nay, but we will abide in the street all night. And then we know that he pressed them. He said, No, it's not a safe place to be. Now, Lot was sitting at the gate. What do we know from people who were sitting at the gate of cities? Okay, they had an important role, didn't they? And what other Bible story do we know that talks about this idea of sitting at the gate? Okay, I hadn't thought of that one, but that's true. Mordecai sat at the gate. Another story where the men of the city sat at the gate. Yeah, Ruth and Boaz, that's right. Boaz was sitting at the gate and they had to go and talk to them. So it was an important role. And as people came into the town, you were the first ones they would meet. And I mean, even in the Māori culture, we have a similar sort of thing, don't we? That the people will greet the new people that come. And it's not so common in Western culture. You just come on into town, and if you want to see someone important, go find them. But in a lot of cultures, the important people were the first ones that you would meet. And Lot, obviously, he was not a native of this area. He had come with Uncle Abraham into this area, and he had chosen to dwell in this area. What was he when he came? What was his profession? Yeah, he was a shepherd. And so he chose the valleys because of the grass. Okay, it was a nice area. Where's he living now? He's living in town, and his job is, we don't know exactly what his job was at this time, but he was obviously an important person. He sat at the gate. You can't be out in the fields all the day and be sitting at the gate. So obviously he's had a change of life from the time that he arrived. And we know, I mean, there's a whole powerful country living lesson right here in this story. So he's sitting at the gate, and we go through the rest of the story, I'm going to skip through a lot of what happened with the angels, with his daughters and so on. That part just shows you the degradation of the city, and not only that Lot had sort of become accustomed to the way that life was in that city. And I want us to come down to verse 11. The men around about the gate, it says, they smote the men that were at the door of the house with blindness, both them small and great, so that they wearied themselves to find the door. Then it moves into another portion of the story, and it says, the men said to Lot, hast thou here any besides, son-in-law and thy sons and thy daughters and whatsoever thou hast in the city? Bring them out of this place. So the men have been blinded, and they say, this is your opportunity to get out. Lot, who else have you got here? And then they give a clear warning, we will destroy this place because the cry of them is waxing great before the face of the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it. So what does Lot do in verse 14? He goes out to do some witnessing, doesn't he? But the people he turns to is his family. Lot went out and he spake to his sons-in-law, which married his daughters, and he said, up, get you out of this place, for the Lord will destroy the city. But he seemed as one that mocked unto his sons-in-law. Even his own family thought he was crazy. So obviously they weren't used to Lot being like this. He had become so entrenched into the culture at the time. But I want you to think, where would you, if you were one of these inhabitants of Sodom, would you be the Lot person? The person who is at least going and sharing something? Or do we not even do that much? See, Lot is the Christian here in our setting. Lot is the good guy. He's the guy that's protected these people. Said, no, the city's too wicked. Come and I'll look after you. Lot is the one that's going out and at least telling some people in the town what's going to happen. And then, verse 15, and when the morning arose, then the angel hastened Lot, saying, arise, take thy wife and thy daughters which are here, lest thou be consumed in the iniquity of the city. So he's gone out and he's witnessed to them, and then the angel stood to say, Lot, hurry up, get out of here. Who's Lot? He's the one that we represent. Is God having to, come on. And then in verse 16, and while he lingered, he's still holding back. Why? He's just been told it's going to be destroyed. He's gone and preached to others that it's going to be destroyed, but yet he's still lingering there. Is he taking this seriously? It says in the end, the men laid hold of his hands and the hand of his wife upon the hand of his two daughters, and the Lord being merciful unto him, and they brought him forth and set him without the city. God dragged him out, and that was being merciful. You know, how often do we find ourselves in situations when we seem to be dragged through things, and that is actually God being merciful, not God being hard on us? And it came to pass when they brought them forth, and they said, escape for your life. Don't look behind you. God still has to tell them, even after they got out of the city, get out of here, go for it. And it's interesting, in verse 18, Lot said, oh, no, we don't need to do that. He says, behold, now thy servant hath found grace in thy sight. Thou hast magnified thy mercy, which thou hast showed unto me in saving my life. So he says, you don't need to worry about it. You've saved my life already. I've done enough. This is enough. I can't escape to the mountain, or some evil will take me and I'll die. What would have happened if he stayed in the city? Evil would have overtaken me, would have died. Now he's scared that if he goes into the mountains, he can't survive out there. Who chose the mountain, or who ended up with the mountain area because Lot chose the plain? Abraham can survive in the mountains. Lot should have been able to survive at least in the valleys, but he's not. And now he's saying, I've just been saved from destruction, but I can't go there because no one will look after me. How much trust has he got in God? And then I turn this right round and look at us. God has given us a message. We could give the message, but we don't act on it. God has to drag us out of that. And then we still say, oh no, God, we can't go that far. You know, how far do you really want us to go? And it's incredible, and the angel said, yeah, okay, we'll accept that. But look at that in verse 20. This is still Lot talking with them. Behold now, this city is near to flee unto. We can just go to this city. And he says, it's a little one. If a big city was really bad, a little city is going to be at least a little bit bad. But we know that where they went was Zor, and Zor was eventually destroyed. So it was obviously, God doesn't destroy a city because it's a little bit bad, okay? Then he said, it's a little one. Oh, let me escape thither. And then what does it say in brackets? Is it not a little one? It's just a little one, a little one. He's really saying we don't want to go too far. We don't want to be too extreme. A little bit of this will just stay there. And he says, and then my soul will live. He still wants a little bit of city in there. But we go through the rest of the story and we know that the wife looked back. But I want you to jump down to verse 27. What's happening over with God's more faithful people? Abraham got up early in the morning to the place where he stood before the Lord, and he looked towards Sodom and Gomorrah and toward all the land of the plain, and behold, and lo, what's happened? The smoke of the country went up as the smoke of a furnace. Now, the very day before, Jesus with the two angels came and were talking to him, and he's negotiating with God. God, have mercy. Save them if there's 50. Save them if there's 45. Save them if there's 30. All the way down to 10, and Abraham gets up in the morning and it's gone. Yeah. And verse 28 is what we just read. Let's read verse 29. And it came to pass when God destroyed the cities of the plain that God remembered who? Abraham. Did he remember Lot? He remembered Abraham. And because God remembered Abraham, he sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow when he overthrew the cities in which Lot dwelt. So you can almost see here, Lot was meant to be the Christian. He was the one that was telling other people about the disaster, but he lingered, he held on to it. He lost his wife through the process because she was so attached to it. But it was because of Abraham that even Lot was spared in this situation. And verse 30, and Lot went up out of Zoar and dwelt in the mountain, and his two daughters with him, for he feared to dwell in Zoar, and he dwelt in a cave, he and his two daughters. So it seems like Lot finally got the message. No, you've got to get out of even there. Even that little bit of sin is too much sin. Now, we understand that Lot lived there in the mountains with his two girls, and we see it, even there was a disaster continued from that point on. We've got the Ammonites and the Moabites, which were a continual problem to the Israelites later. But Lot has lived in poverty in those mountains and hardship for the rest of his life. Now, why did he choose the valley? Because it would be prosperous. He wanted to prosper. Because, now I think, where's the sheep? Where's the cows? Where's the servants? Where's the herdsman that was fighting with Abraham, herdsman? He's ended up, we don't even know if he still had them while he was in Sodom. Maybe he has switched from this country living style, and righto, we're going to take on and adopt the city living style, which is a lot more temperamental when it comes to business, a lot more fickle. Whatever he'd invested in, maybe he'd sold the animals and invested in the best real estate in town, it's all gone. What we need to realize is let's invest in our character building. Let's invest in things that are tangible, because those are the things that in a moment can't be taken from us. Anything that we're working towards, anything we're building up on this earth, in a moment can be totally gone. I want you to come to one more text. It's interesting where some of these stories pop up in other parts of the Bible. Let's go to Lamentations. Lamentations chapter 4. And we're going to look at verse 6. Lamentations 4 and verse 6. And if we had the time, we could look at the context here, which is talking about the gold becomes dim. In other words, your money losing value. And it's talking about various different things here of destruction. But verse 6 is where it brings in Sodom. For the punishment of the iniquity of the daughter of my people is greater than the punishment of the sin of Sodom, that was overthrown as in a moment, and no hands stayed on her. The punishment of the iniquity of the daughter of my people is greater than the punishment of Sodom. Now you remember, even when Jesus came along, he said that woe unto thee, was it Chorazin, and what was the other one? Bethsaida. Because if the things that were done in you were done in Sodom and Gomorrah, they would have repented. Now, God, that sort of thing, well, that wasn't fair. Why didn't God do that for Sodom and Gomorrah? No, they had made their decision. But it also says there that those places, which were in Israel, were better off than Sodom. Here, we're getting a similar idea that the punishment of the iniquity for God's people is greater than the sin of Sodom. And how was that overthrown? In a moment. So we need to realize that if we find ourselves in a situation where we are delaying, we're dithering, we're not moving forward, when we're given clear instruction, that we could be worse off than these places. And it happened in a moment. I want to read you a passage here from Review and Herald. It says, "There is a feverish love of pleasure at this time, a fearful increase of licentiousness, a contempt for all authority. Not only worldlings, but professed Christians also are governed by inclination rather than duty. The words of Christ are sounding down through the ages, watch and pray. Ye, brethren, are not in darkness that the day should overtake you as a thief. Therefore let us not sleep as do others, but let us watch and be sober. The signs of the times are pointing us to the near approach of our Lord. It is indeed true that the end of this world's history is near, that Christ is at the door. Are we preparing for the great judgment scene?" Talking on judgment, let's go back to the three angels' messages in Revelation. Revelation 14. Because we've been looking at, peace and safety, and then come sudden destructions. What is the preparation that we can do? I mean, we can talk about all these destructions, these things that come in a moment, but if we're not going to learn about how we can prepare, what's the point? So we've already learnt from the three angels' messages some of these solutions. The first one was in the first angel's message, and what was the key thought that we pulled out of that from the first angel's message? Okay, fear God, give him glory. How is that? What was the focus we were pulling out of that in relation to being prepared and the situation of the earth around us? Okay, what are we going to focus on? Are we going to focus on the disasters, the conspiracy, everything around us, or are we going to focus on fearing God, giving him glory, and worshipping him? Okay, well, that's the first angel's message, the whole thing of this, the everlasting gospel. Let's focus on God and give him glory as us reflecting it. So that's going to be a change in our lives. What was the second angel's message, key thought that we pulled out yesterday? Babylon has fallen. There's no call to action. There's nothing there to say you need to be going around and telling everybody about all the conspiracies of Babylon. It's just be aware of the situation of Babylon. Focus first. Your heart needs to be right with God. Secondly, Babylon has fallen. There's a bigger picture to this. There is an evil side to it. Right, let's move on and add to this a little more. The third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, "If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascendeth up for ever and ever, and they have no rest, day nor night, who worship the beast and his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name." Now, we can add a little more. Remember, each part of the three angels' message is important. We can't just take the first, we can't just take the second, we need to add in the third, and we've got 2 more mornings, we've got more to add in yet as well. So we've still got the same emphasis, focus on God rather than what's around you. But, second angel, be aware that Babylon is fallen. And then we add in here, don't worship or focus on the beast or its image. So now we are adding a little bit of a call to action. Don't focus on this, don't make this your everything. Don't worship the beast. Don't partake of what the beast is and his image. Now, of course, there's a whole study on that, and we haven't got time to do justice to a study on that. But you see the progression that we're getting through here. The first, focus on God in your heart and reflecting that into change in your life. Be aware there is a Babylon that is there. But you notice it doesn't say don't participate of Babylon. It talks about the beast and its image. So, of course, in a study of that, we understand that a little more. But it's saying stay away from that type of thing. Just as Lot would have been wise to stay away from a lot of that, because his Babylon, his Sodom fell. and it was great destruction to him and his family. Tomorrow we're going to move on and we're going to jump into a New Testament story, which I always find very fascinating, this whole concept of in a moment, and we're going to look at Jesus' disciples. In 3 years, life can become a new normal. Who has lived in a place here for less than 3 years in the place they're currently living? Okay, a few of you. Now, if you've been there for a period of 3 years, life can become pretty normal in 3 years. I mean, even give it a year and you start to settle in. 3 years the disciples were living with Jesus. They were going about, they were doing good. It was a radical change for them at first, but after 3 years, that can become pretty normal. Tomorrow we're going to look at what happened when life became that sort of normal. We'll leave it at that. Let's close off with a prayer and carry on with our day. Let's just bow our heads for a moment. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the story we have in the Bible of Lot. You've recorded it for us so that we can understand and we can learn, because we are told it's a parallel to our day as well. I pray that you'll help us not just to be the one that goes and talks about it and dithers around, but that we will have action and that we will avoid the beast and its mark. Please go with us today in all that we do. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.